Man, I gotta be real with you. Things are starting to get really interesting behind the scenes with this team right now. What looked like a locked-in plan just a few weeks ago suddenly isn't so obvious anymore, and it feels like something different might be brewing. You know how this front office works. They don't just follow the script. They switch things up when nobody's expecting it. And honestly, if this plays out the way it's starting to look, we might be in for a move that catches a lot of people off guard. Before we continue, don't forget to like the video if you're a true fan and leave a comment below. Do you trust the GM to make the right call in the first round, or would you rather play it safe this year? Now, let's get straight into it, because this is where it gets really interesting. There's been a noticeable change in thinking when it comes to that 23rd overall pick. The idea of locking in an offensive lineman is no longer as certain as it once was. And honestly, when you look at how the board might fall, it starts to make a lot of sense. There are some offensive tackles in this class that don't fully justify that pick at 23 unless very specific names fall, and that uncertainty is opening the door for another position to enter the conversation in a serious way. And that position is safety. Yes, you heard that right. The Eagles could be looking at a defensive back in round 1, and not just any defensive back, but a high-upside safety who can immediately impact this defense. According to the latest evaluations and shifts in perspective, two names are starting to stand out as legitimate options for Philadelphia. Dylan Thiemann out of Oregon and Emmanuel McNeill-Warren out of Toledo. Let's start with Thiemann, because this is a player who checks a lot of boxes for what the Eagles value. He's an elite athlete, posting a 9.71 relative athletic score, which immediately puts him in that upper tier of prospects. He's explosive, he's fast, and he has the kind of versatility that allows him to contribute in multiple ways. We're talking about a safety who can play over the top, support the run, and actually make plays on the football. Last season, he was targeted 29 times and allowed just 145 yards, while also recording 7 pass breakups and 2 interceptions. That's production, and that's exactly what you want from a player stepping into a bigger role at the next level. But it's not just about stats. What really stands out is his development. This is a player who improved his tackling year after year, who consistently put himself around the football, and who showed the ability to elevate his game when surrounded by better talent. That matters when you're projecting to the NFL. Yes, there are moments where he can get a little too focused on the quarterback and get baited, but those are coachable issues. The raw tools, the athleticism, and the upside are all there. Now, flip over to Emmanuel McNeill-Warren, and you get a completely different but equally intriguing profile. This is a bigger, more physical safety, standing at 6'3", 201 pounds, with a presence that you feel on the field. He's not just a hitter, he's a tone setter. He brings that downhill mentality, and he's not afraid to lay the lumber. What's impressive is that despite not being heavily targeted in coverage, he was incredibly effective when tested. Opposing quarterbacks had a rating of just 50.3 when throwing his way, and he consistently made plays on the ball with pass breakups and interceptions. There's also a connection here that Eagles fans shouldn't ignore. McNeill-Warren comes from Toledo, a program that has already produced talent familiar to this organization, and there are existing ties within the Eagles coaching staff. That kind of familiarity can sometimes play a role in these decisions. And just like we've seen before, small school prospects can absolutely thrive at the next level if they have the right traits, and Warren has those traits. So now you start to see the bigger picture forming. If the Eagles decide to pivot away from offensive line in round 1, it's not because they're ignoring the position. It's because they believe they can still address it later with quality talent. There's already talk about players like Jennings-Dunker potentially being available in the second round, which would allow Philadelphia to still reinforce the interior offensive line without reaching at 23. This is classic Howie Roseman thinking. Stay flexible, read the board, and maximize value at every pick. Don't force a position if the value isn't there. Instead, take the best player who can make an impact, and then adjust your strategy in the following rounds. And when you look at the current safety situation, it's not hard to understand why this shift is happening. With names like Reed Blankenship, Andrew Makuba, and Marcus Epps in the mix, there's room to add a dynamic presence who can elevate the entire unit. A player like Thiemann or McNeil Warren could step in and immediately compete, while also giving this defense a long-term building block. So here's the real question. Eagles fans, if the board falls this way, and the Eagles have the opportunity to take a high-upside safety at 23 instead of reaching for an offensive lineman, do you want Howie Roseman to make that move? Or do you still believe the trenches have to come first no matter what? Because if this scenario plays out the way it's starting to look, we could be talking about one of the most strategic draft executions we've seen from this front office in recent years. And that's not an exaggeration. This is where everything starts to connect, and where the Eagles could quietly build one of the most complete draft classes in the league without forcing a single pick. Let's continue breaking this down, because round 2 is where things could really fall perfectly into place. If Philadelphia goes safety in the first round, the plan doesn't stop there. The expectation is that a player like Jennings Dunker could still be on the board, and that changes everything. This is a guard out of Iowa who brings exactly the kind of mentality this team loves. He's tough, physical, and plays with an edge, especially in the run game. When you watch him, you see a player who doesn't just block, he imposes himself. Now, is he a perfect prospect? No. There are reasons why he might slip into the second round. There are moments where quickness can give him trouble, and his lower body can look a bit stiff at times. But here's the key. When you slide him inside to guard, those weaknesses become far less of a concern. What you're left with is a strong, reliable interior lineman who can anchor in pass protection and bring real power to the run game. He posted an overall PFF grade of 80.6 last season, allowing just 2 sacks and 10 pressures. That's production you can absolutely work with. So now think about the value here. Instead of reaching for an offensive lineman at 23, you land a dynamic safety in round 1, and then come back in round 2 and still fill a key need on the offensive line with a player who fits your system. That's efficient roster building. That's how contenders operate. And then we get to round 3. And this is where things get even more intriguing, because there's a name that's starting to gain serious traction internally and among evaluators. A player that a lot of fans might not be familiar with yet, but that could end up being one of the steals of this entire draft. That name is Ted Hurst, wide receiver out of Georgia State. I'm telling you right now, this is the type of prospect that Eagles fans fall in love with once they see him on the field. If he had played at a bigger program, there's a real argument that he could be in the first-round conversation. Instead, he's flying a bit under the radar, and that could work heavily in Philadelphia's favor. What makes Hurst so appealing is how complete his skill set is. He's not just a deep threat, although he absolutely has the speed to stretch the field. He's also someone who can create after the catch, force missed tackles, and win in contested situations thanks to his size. Last season, he put up 71 receptions for over 1,000 yards, averaging 14.1 yards per catch, with 6 touchdowns. And the year before that, nearly another 1,000-yard season with an even higher average of 17.1 yards per reception and 9 touchdowns. That kind of consistency and big play ability is exactly what you want to add to your offense, especially when there are questions about the future at the wide receiver position. There has been ongoing discussion about A.J. Brown and whether or not the Eagles might consider moving him. And while nothing is confirmed, The mere possibility makes a player like Hurst even more valuable. He gives you flexibility. He gives you insurance. And if needed, he could step into a larger role sooner than people expect. So when you step back and look at the full picture, this potential draft strategy starts to look incredibly balanced. You address the secondary with a high-upside playmaker in round 1. You reinforce the offensive line with a tough, reliable guard in round 2. And then you add an explosive weapon to your offense in round 3. That's not just filling needs, that's building for both the present and the future. And this is exactly why the shift away from automatically targeting offensive line in the first round is so significant. It's not about abandoning the trenches. It's about recognizing where the best value is and trusting your ability to find solutions across all 3 days of the draft. That's what good front offices do, and that's what has kept the Eagles competitive year after year. Now, as we wrap this up, I want to hear from you, because this is where your voice matters. If the Eagles walk away from this draft with a safety like Dylan Thiemann or Emmanuel McNeil-Warren, an offensive lineman like Jennings Dunker, and a sleeper wide receiver like Ted Hurst, are you satisfied with that approach? Or do you still believe they should lock in the offensive line in round 1 no matter what? And if you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, and don't forget to click on the video that's on your screen right now. That's where you'll find the latest Eagles news and analysis first. Always right here, where real fans stay ahead of everything happening with the Birds. Go Eagles!